All right, welcome everybody to tonight's Tri-Town meeting. The agenda is pretty light tonight. We have one item. It is a presentation by Minuteman School regarding 5 items. The FY 2016 budget, the new Minuteman Educational Program Plan, building project report, a regional agreement update, and then comments and questions. Lancaster is your host. I'm the town administrator, Ryan McNutt, and I'd like to do a quick around the room of introductions.
Mark Sprig, Bolton Selectman.
Stan Wysocki, Bolton Selectman.
Don Lowe, Bolton Town Administrator.
Jennifer Leone, Lancaster Selectman.
Kevin Mahoney, Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Minuteman.
Ed Dillon, Superintendent at Minuteman.
Thank you very much. So I would like to begin with the presentation, and then after the last bullet item is the comments and questions. So if the superintendent is ready,
Sure.
the show is yours.
Thank you. As Ryan reviewed, we're going to take a high altitude view of all of these items, and if there's a pressing question, I'll be glad to take it. If not, we'll just revisit the slides. Our FY16 budget proposal, our overall budget is up less than 1%, 0.9%, and of course our budget, like everyone's budgets right now, are based upon some assumptions, and the governor's budget proposal should be out hopefully in a month, and we'll be able to make any adjustments we need. But our budget is very lean this coming year, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Some of the things that have been driving the budget for this year are the school committee voted back in June to transition to a smaller school, an enrollment of about 628. And this budget for FY16 is the first budget that's beginning the implementation of that vote. We're beginning 16 programs. Also in this budget, we've established an OPEB trust fund, and we're contributing $50,000 to it. We're continuing to fund critical building repairs. Our health insurance is estimated at a 7% increase, and we're also in the midst right now of bidding a new transportation contract for next year. Special ed assessments have been revised as well based upon a letter we received from the Commissioner of Education where we're not charging any individual special ed assessments to member town students. You may recall in the past that we counted the number of students on an IEP and there was an additional assessment per student. We've now incorporated all of our special ed costs into the operating assessment, so there's no individual pullouts of that. Non-resident communities will still pay an additional assessment on top of the tuition that the commissioner sets of $4,500 for next year, and that's based upon our actual expenditures. Budget impacts beyond FY16, I think it's important to think about where Minuteman is in regards to transitioning to a smaller school and how that may impact FY17 and 18. We're closing 2 programs, we're adding 2 programs, and we're merging 2 career and vocational technical education programs. Our focus going forward is on increasing in-district enrollment. Program closures will have cost implications because the procedures that the department lay out for us when we close a Chapter 74 program are really quite simple. Any students that are in that program now, we must staff fully until the student completes that program in 4 years, 3 or 4 years. So we will have some moments of short-term excess staffing, more than likely in the FY17 and 18 budgets.
Which 2 are you closing?
We're closing marketing and telecommunications. This is a look at our overall enrollment the last 7 or 8 years. We're at about 745 total students, 414 from member towns, 164 from Watertown, Waltham, and Medford, and 167 from other communities, including Boston. This is over the last 5 years, we've had some increases, and we had a little drop this year, but we're still higher than we were in 2010. And this is just the high school age population. Just a reminder, we do have adults taking postgraduate programs, and we also have a number of students who attend half-day, every day, in their junior and senior year, and then they go back to their home high school, whether it's Lexington High School or Wayland, are the two towns participating in that right now. Bolton over the years has been fairly steady, around 10 or 11 students. Lancaster has been a little bit up and down, but it's been on the rise the last 4 years. 32 students from one community. I think that's the third or fourth highest sending community right now. Stowe has been seeing a steady decline. We're really not sure about that. We know we have some interest from Stowe parents this year. I've met a few of them at some of the events we've had already. And we'll go through the assessments, and this is all in the handouts there. And Kevin also has some more detailed budget books that bring much more detail to our FY16 budget. 10 students from Bolton, the assessment, $236,000, and plus we add on the middle school assessment. Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe participate in our middle school technology outreach program, and so those costs for those programs are allocated for each town a little bit differently. Lancaster's assessment is up quite a bit, $953,000 total, including the middle school program, and you can see it's largely driven by the increased enrollment over the last 4 years. Kevin?
If I add, Ed, also for Bolton and Lancaster in the middle school program, between the two programs, we're investing about $70,000 in technology. So you'll see the jump both in Lancaster and in Bolton. In fact, it contributed to most of Bolton's increase because of this investment in technology.
That resides at the middle schools in your district. The Stowe assessment is $624,000, 19 total FTE students. In revenue, one of the reasons our budget is up only 0.9%, but our assessments to our 16-member towns is up about 5.9%, almost entirely due to this decrease in non-resident tuition revenue. One, because we're accepting fewer out-of-district students, and two, we're anticipating the commissioner is going to continue reducing the out-of-district tuition rate over the next couple of years. Right now, our tuition rate for non-resident students, just the base tuition, not including special ed or transportation or anything else, is about $18,500.
It's $18,460.
And what was the rate we used for next year? 18 or 17?
17.9.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you can see this. This is over the last few years. The revenue plan, the assessments to the member towns is up about $619,000. Chapter 78, very marginal increase. Transportation reimbursement is going to increase a little bit. Our prior year tuition, you can see this prior year tuition number, this $5.8 million. This is the tuition that we're collecting now, that we're going to be applying towards next year's revenue plan. The current year tuition of $400,000 is a portion of what we anticipate collecting next year. And then $100,000 out of our E&D, and you see that comes up with the $185,000 increase, about 1%. Here you can see the budget overall in a high altitude view. Administration is down. Student instructional services, where the majority of our staff is up about 2%, which reflects a collective bargaining agreement that was ratified by the teachers yesterday. And not much change in some of the other things. You'll see the debt service is up a bit. This is...
That's the pay down on the bond anticipation note for the feasibility study.
So we've been in the feasibility study a long time? Yes.
Don had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. The $100,000 from E&D, what percentage of that is the total amount of funds that you have in E&D? Or is that just a rotating 100,000?
It's pretty much been a rotating 100,000. And we're estimating that it may be about 150,000 this year. We haven't had it certified yet.
Okay, but it's primarily most of your E&D?
Yes, that's
Okay.
Yeah,
correct.
we're nowhere near that 5% threshold. These are some of the capital projects we're looking to take care of in FY16, some repairs to our roads and driveways, fire alarm equipment, replacement of some doors, really minor, just Band-Aids on a lot of parts of the building, some transportation. The John Deere tractor will be used by landscaping, horticulture, as well as our maintenance and operations in the summer. And then we're continuing to fund our stabilization fund, which was established 3 or 4 years ago, with $100,000 going into that stabilization fund. What's our total balance in that fund right now?
250 without that.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the educational program plan, but were there any other budget questions in regards to what you've seen? We can come back to them if you think. Yes, David?
Yeah.
Okay, you're building towards a 628 pupil school, but you have or anticipate 745 for the current or coming fiscal year.
Right now, we have 745,
Right.
yes.
Now, how are you getting down to the 628? By reducing the out-of-district students?
Well, we're closing 2 programs, and so that by itself is going to start to reduce the enrollment, because we're not accepting new students into that. It'll take 3 or 4 years to transition to that number and have those programs closed and the other ones situated in accord with the educational program plan.
So it'll be about a 4-year program to go from 745 students down to 628.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What is the total OPEB liability?
Oh,
Oh, it's about 23 million.
So $50,000 is really not.
It's an initial attempt to recognize that we have a liability and to establish the fund.
so our new educational program plan, I talked about a school of 628, 16 programs. What does that look like, and what's sort of the foundation of the educational program plan? Supports an academy model, a career academy model. And this is something that's been talked about and worked on by staff and students over the last 4 years in creating an academy model. And the reason that we feel the academy model is beneficial to us is it builds on our strengths. And it also allows us some flexibility we believe we need going forward. There's greater integration of curriculum, integration of not just vocational and technical, but among disciplines on the academic side, among career and vocational technical programs as well. More flexibility in project-based learning. This is sort of a fundamental methodology that we use at Minuteman. Flexibility in scheduling, and for finally trying to accommodate real, true common planning time. Common planning time has been identified by staff as one of the number 1 or number 2 issues that we should be able to try to provide in a new plan and perhaps in a new facility. And as I said, the 4-year transition plan is going. So this is what it looks like. These are the 2 academies. Life Science and Services has 7 programs. Engineering, Construction, and Trades has 9. And then what we call our shared house. And this is where students from either academy would be accessing these programs, these academics, our advanced placement, health services. There's some common curriculum that all students receive at Minuteman, and also work-based learning and some other learning. And you see here's a new program, Multimedia Engineering, and another new program is Advanced Manufacturing and Metal Fabrication. This academy would have about 100 more students than this one would. And we've used this model in terms of our planning with the architects in the feasibility study. So the architects have, and we'll talk about the models in a moment, but some of the models address this, honor this, this academy model more than other potential facility renovations. Yes?
So the academy model is predicated on a new building? Or
No.
on a renovation, or is this something you're transitioning to now? Are you adding advanced manufacturing and multimedia now?
Yes.
Okay, so there's room for that in the
Well, the
grade
way that
level?
we add a program, we can, in next year's budget, there's a .25 FTE teacher for advanced manufacturing and a .25 teacher for multimedia. We don't expect someone to work the full year for, whatever that works out to, 7 hours a week.
Right.
What we're hoping to do is, once we understand where we are a little bit better with the feasibility and the building and the preferred schematic design that the school committee votes on, we would hire a couple of teachers at the end of the year to start working on the new program approval process. Things like getting the frameworks in line, adjusting curriculum, starting an advisory committee for each of those programs, so that by FY17, we would be able to offer an exploratory experience, albeit limited, so that students who were freshmen in FY17, as sophomores in FY18, could start the beginnings of that curriculum. And if everything works perfectly, which it will, we'll be in a new building sometime or a new facility renovated in FY20. So we have to plan now because of just the ramp up there.
I have a question on the prior slide to the one you were just showing. Just asking about to what extent you had to negotiate in your contracts the common planning time. That it's a complaint among many schools that contractually you're obliged to a particular amount of time, and that if you want to do the right thing, which is get your teachers to do planning with each other in a stronger way, you have to adjust that. Was that an issue for Minuteman as well?
It wasn't a contractual issue, it was more of a practical issue that we began addressing about 4 years ago, and the way that we've addressed it now in the current structure that we have is we increased the number of delayed openings. So teachers come in fresh in the morning and we have 2.5 hours of common planning time. Sometimes we do things together as a staff. We also have some early releases as well. But we find that after school common planning just doesn't get the energy there that's there in the morning. And I think we have 6 or 7 delayed openings over the course of our school year, 5 or 6 early releases. And then before school starts, we have a full day or two of common planning time. And that's about the best we can do right now with the schedule that we have.
What does that total up in terms of training hours per year?
I think it was a total of 9 days, the equivalent of 9 full school days spread over 13.
In hours, that would be?
What would that be, 60 hours? 50 or 60 hours? And we've also taken a real approach that the team leads, or the department chairs, if you will, have been trained in facilitating meetings, been trained in professional learning communities. We've also tried to integrate into the educator evaluation system some of this common planning time work, as well as individual teacher goals and department goals and school-wide goals. It really, teachers want to plan more, and they want to have energy to do it, and that it's going to take some flexibility in the schedule as we go forward. This is just some advanced manufacturing. You may have heard in our state alone over the next 10 years, they're projecting 100,000 openings, 10,000 openings a year in advanced manufacturing. There's also a lot of business and industry support in terms of equipment, curriculum, expertise. There's also a lot of state and I would say quasi-private and quasi-public programs around encouraging the opening of advanced manufacturing and metal fab programs. Multimedia engineering, people wonder what this is about, but it really involves the creative industries, advertising, marketing, architecture, visual arts design, film and media. We're using the frameworks. We're in a state where we only have, I think, 45 curriculum frameworks. And there are many more types of occupations than just 45 types of jobs. So we're getting creative with what's known as the video production and broadcasting curriculum frameworks. That's the sort of the core competencies, and we're building off of those based on a lot of help and information and advice that we've gotten from Suffolk University out of their technical theater arts program. We had a person from MIT come and talk to the school committee a few years ago. But there's also some unions involved with event planning, exhibit halls. I guess the way I look at it is when you go into a big exhibit hall at a conference and all the types of things that are going on there, whether it's technology or rigging or things related to sound design, light design, It's all incorporated into multimedia engineering, and it's a fast-growing and more commonly recognized occupation. And we believe it, from the surveys we've done with students, there's a very high interest level in this area. We've also seen that, I talk about filling the school with students from our 16-member towns, and how do you do that? Well, there's 3 reasons, really. I think its perceptions are changing, our planning is becoming more sophisticated, and I think there's just some simple math that we have to look at. We've seen a marked shift in parental perception of career and technical schools and programs, not just across the Commonwealth, but across the country. If you've read the Harvard Pathways to Prosperity report, Minuteman has been featured on a number of national programs and media outlets over the last few months. We're also in a chapter in a book just released called Job U. And when we talk to parents who come to our open houses, or I had a dinner a few weeks ago for middle school parents, they really think about the value add of a vocational technical high school program, and also coupled with the huge investment to be made in a post-secondary program. I see families talking about it more and more. We have a strategic plan that we have been implementing now. We have a team of teachers, counselors, and administrators that are working with a national expert who has a proven track record in increasing the percent of 8th grade applications that go to their local vocational technical program, regardless of the model. He's very excited about working with us, really because of this number right here. We have nearly 4,000 8th graders across our 16-member communities. Over the last 10 years, less than 4% of the 8th graders have even applied to Minuteman. And when we look at our numbers, if about 70% of the students that apply actually are counted on October 1. And that number of 3.6 to 3.9% ends up with about 112 freshmen from our member district communities. And then if you total that by 4, you're at about a school of 435. But we really believe strongly that we can bump that number, and we're being fairly, I think, conservative in believing we can get a 6% application rate. Across the Commonwealth, the average is 7% for suburban vocational technical schools. And if we are able to achieve that rate over the next few years, we're looking at freshman classes of 168 from our member towns, and a school of about 616. So we really believe it's achievable, and we've seen a big increase in 8th graders from our member towns. Over 300 have actually toured Minuteman already. 300 member town 8th graders. And that they've gone on a shadow day, they've gone on a tour, an open house. Some came to my dinner. So we're really going to try to capture these. These folks are golden right now to us, and we're spending a lot of time with them. Next week, during February break, we have over 30 member district young girls from middle school participating in our Young Girls in STEM program that runs from Tuesday through Friday, and we have a bus going out to pick them up, and it's free to member district communities. We have one out-of-district young woman in there, and I think we're charging her a lot of money. The building project. Just to give you a reminder of where we're at, our building was built in 1972. It's about 305,000 square feet. It was constructed under the open classroom design and was applied to a vocational school. Very little has been done to the school since 1972. There was a roof put on in about 29 years ago. In 2009, we were able to use the tax-exempt municipal lease and an ESCO project to improve our core energy systems. Boilers, chillers, electrical switchgear, some things that were really needed to be replaced. And we're paying for a lot of that based upon the energy savings we've been realizing since that time. In that same year, we were invited into the MSBA feasibility study process. Yes, that's 2009. So almost 6 years ago. We are the longest running feasibility study in the history of the MSBA. Or the SBA, as it was known previously, I'm told. This past summer, we received an extension, noted as a final extension, of our feasibility study to June 2014. The MSBA is, despite bureaucracies and such, they've been very patient with Minuteman. They understand the challenges of 16 communities. And they've begun to understand the challenges that many vocational technical school districts have that have 7, 8, 9, 22, 24 different communities in getting a building project approved, because we have to have, based upon our current regional agreement, all 16 communities approve a building project as a normal way of doing it. So just recently, we had some preliminary cost estimates were released, and they are in your, oh, just another note, right now, because we've been in there so long, I guess this is one good thing about it, we're grandfathered in at the 40% level of reimbursement, so any additional incentives get added on to 40%. If we were to leave or be thrown out and try to get back in, we'd be at a 32%, and that's 8% is a significant amount of dough. So here's the preliminary cost estimates. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 right here were done by our architects as part of the feasibility study process. They require that you give them a model demonstrating how you would renovate the existing footprint, a model that renovates and does an addition, a new school, and we've demarcated a new school by itself and a new school with demolition. The demolition piece is not covered by MSBA, it's not reimbursable. So we thought it was important to call that out. And also, if you look at the duration of the project, obviously a new school could be done in 2.5 years, demo a little longer, 5 years for renovation. This is an occupied renovation. You know, when you think about modular classrooms and such, well, how do you get a modular automotive shop? You know, a modular, you just can't do it. Can't do it. And then the school building committee, based upon a number of questions and feedback from our member communities, used the same estimating company, their reports, their data, to come up with a repair option that just repaired what was there. And then a repair option that tried to address the educational program plan that I just shared with you. And these were the numbers they came. Obviously, MSBA is not involved in this at this point. And so that's the full district share there. And the folks on the building committee and the subcommittee that worked on this, that are experienced contractors, very experienced with building, are estimating that this would take about 10 years occupied. And the escalations in there are not really what I would call, they're very conservative. Every time we've opened the building, we find that what we see behind the wall is not what's on the plans. So there's a contingency aspect that I think is very difficult to predict with either of these two models. But so you can see the most reasonable district share is to build a new school, and that's what I have here is this model over here is a new school, and this model over here was the renovation addition, and this is just some of the current stuff done.
And could you talk a little bit about, you know, the 40% is the base from the MSBA, but there are some incentives that can be gotten, such as green energy and the like. Could you talk a little bit about what we could get the base up to if we meet certain criteria?
Yeah, the eligible costs, and that's an important word. What's eligible, what's ineligible. You have to kind of work through those definitions, but our owner's project manager, Skanska, has indicated we could get as high as 47, 48%. The way the rules are written right now. You may recall Senator Donnelly last year submitted a Senate bill that would benefit all regional schools in the MSBA pipeline. And that was that a regular regional school would get 10% added onto the base. A regional vocational technical school would get 20% added onto the base. There wasn't a large appetite for that with the legislature at that time. Senator Donnelly, I saw him a few weeks ago at a chamber event, he's resubmitted the bill again. And with Governor Baker's, I don't want to say rhetoric, but his conversations about career technical education, and Piser's conversations about it, it may have more legs this year than in previous years. You also may know that the commissioners are proposing some new regulations under Chapter 74, which would impact out-of-district tuition. And the commissioner is proposing that any out-of-district tuition would add on top of that a capital fee if the receiving school was in the MSBA pipeline. That would be across the state. And with Governor Baker has put a halt on changing all regulations, so we had anticipated the Board of Ed would be looking at those in February. Now we hear the earliest the board may look at them and vote on them is April.
So you have to be in the MSBA pipeline in order to, the way the new regulation is written, to assess capital to out-of-district students? Is that?
That was their intent. I think the language that we saw finally was more broad-based than that. So it was more like if you've been in a project and you're paying it off, you'd still be eligible
To assess.
to assess. And as we understand it, the commissioner's going to set that fee. And it's going to be really very simple from what we've seen. The average of what all the towns are paying, that would be the average added on top. Unless that student is coming from a school district that has 5 or more Chapter 74 programs. And then they would be charged 75%. So a student from Medford or Waltham, which has 5 or more, let's say it was $4,000, they would be charged $3,000 instead of $4,000. Is the way we understand it. Our schedule, really from now through the 1st of April, no fooling, we're going to be meeting with town officials and citizens and getting feedback on these models. I brought them with me, even though we were talking about more than the building, just so we could generate some discussion, and I see how it feels to schlep around big boards and easels in the snow. May 15th, the school committee is going to need to vote on one of these preferred options. At that point in time, we submit that to the MSBA, and we hope that in July the MSBA would agree with whatever option. But they will name the preferred option. We have June 30th as, I have it as a line in the sand maybe, when our regional agreement is approved or not. And because I think if it is not, some of these other things that happen after that may need to be adjusted. But hopefully that will happen. And if that does, in the spring of 2016, a year from now, we would have a project going to all the town meetings. And after all that happens, an actual shovel in the ground, I'm told, will be 2018. And the impact on any budget, and any of our member town budgets, wouldn't probably be until FY20. Regional agreement. Well, all I know about the regional agreement is 6 towns have not approved it. One of those 6 towns has disapproved it. The school committee a few months back in the fall identified a group of town managers and selectmen that were tasked with working with those 6 towns on a real individualized basis to understand their concerns and to try to address those concerns in whatever way was possible, including the utilization of what was developed over the last year in an intermunicipal agreement. An intermunicipal agreement, the notion at the beginning was if a very small town wanted to leave, like a Dover or Weston, who only send 2 or 3 kids a year for the last 25 years, if they want to leave but want to reserve space for their students and pay the tuition and pay a facility fee, that could be accomplished through an intermunicipal agreement. So those discussions are ongoing. The school committee hasn't seen any drafts of a real intermunicipal agreement yet, but there are some drafts being developed. I'm hopeful in the February meeting we'll have a time to look at one of those. And this was a tool, I guess. Don was part of the task force on working on the agreement. On both task forces.
We don't
Dave's
need any
on the first one.
approval from the Department of Ed for intermunicipal agreements?
Once-
Is that,
As long as we follow, they approved the frameworks that we had voted on by the school committee. As long as we stay within the parameters of those, we will submit them. Once they're signed by the Minuteman School District and the sending community school district, the commissioner was pretty adamant about preferring that this is an agreement between educators not between an educational institution and a municipal institution.
Oh, okay.
That's what he would prefer, and we're doing our best to make sure that that happens.
So it's gonna be between the Neshoba School District and Minuteman on the off chance one of us tries to,
Well, it would depend on who, if Bolton wanted to leave,
yeah.
Bolton has a school, K through 6?
No, it's all
Or is it all
It's all
K through
Neshoba.
12? All 3 towns are K through
Yes.
12 now?
Yeah,
Yeah, then it would be with the K through 12 regional school district.
okay. That's interesting.
Yes,
Can you just take, something tells me you probably know the names of the 6 towns.
yes, I
Can you give me the one that's disapproved it and the other 5 that are
do.
pending?
Wayland has disapproved it. No action has been taken by Lincoln, Dover, Belmont,
Wait a minute, what is it, Dover, Belmont? Yep,
Sudbury,
yep.
and one other.
Foxborough.
Foxborough. How could you
Foxborough.
forget Foxborough?
I was there last night, you were there last night, till 10:30.
Thank you.
But Wayland is revisiting it. They've agreed to reissue the proposal. So it's not dead in Wayland.
Going back to
It's
Springtown meeting?
It's going back.
In fact, the concerns as we understand them that existed at the time, I think have been primarily addressed. So there's, I think, a fair amount of hope that the vote might be reversed.
Is it your understanding that the other 5 are moving towards town meeting action?
Yes.
Annual meetings in May?
Well, Lincoln is the first one, and that's March 28th. And we've been working very hard with them to craft an intermunicipal agreement that addresses some of their concerns, as much as we can.
But the others are also moving ahead?
Yeah, they're all gonna be they are all articles in the town warrants.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the presentation. I don't know if you want me to talk a little bit more about these models, or if you want to look at them. David?
The 628 size school, I assume the new school is going to be built with 628 students in mind. It appears to me that assumes you go from 4% of the district's students being in Minuteman to 6%.
That's our intention.
And that's a 50% increase in a very affluent set of towns. That strikes me as a real reach. If you were to go for a 25% increase, my math is right, that works out to 523 students. I wonder if it wouldn't be better to build a school to 523 students rather than 628.
That's a great question, but the next question is, what programs in the educational program plan do we have to eliminate?
In other words, just having fewer students wouldn't reduce your costs if you're going to still have 16 programs or whatever the number is.
Right, one of the attractive things about Minuteman now, and has been for a quarter century or more, has been the diversity of programming that we offer. And because we live in the district that we do, programs like engineering, robotics, environmental and biotechnology probably would not have been offered had Minuteman been a smaller school. But we saw the demand for that in the population we have, and we see it going forward. And I'm real confident in the work that we're doing with our Mr. Perna. And he's very confident. He's more confident than I am, I think.
In terms of increasing this percentage.
Yes.
And another thing is, I'm not sure, as a taxpayer, I want you to succeed in that, because the Minuteman students cost me more than the Neshoba regional students.
And they always will be.
But you're asking me to add another 50%, another 5 of those from Bolton, roughly, if we go from 10 to 15. And, you know, the incremental cost of each of those is close to $10,000. So you're asking us to add
And just think what those students will give back to
gonna say that. I was gonna say, and they will probably earn significantly higher wages in the course of their lifetimes and contribute to towns and states and.
You know, a lot of our kids stay in the district. You know, when they come out, they're able to go into a career directly or go on to some additional training. A lot of them come back and stay back and open up businesses. There are thousands of Minuteman alumni still in our district that are employers. You know, they'll be taking care of me. Yes.
So my question is kind of more of a general question. I went to a trade school many years ago, and a lot of these programs didn't exist at the time. But I'm just kind of interested in over the future, if there is probably going to be a consolidation of programs like design and visual communications, programming and web development, and then a new multimedia engineering. Because a lot of those things are functionally just going to be
Absolutely.
all the same.
Well, absolutely, and that, you know, this thing right here was one of our first planning exercises, where we looked at programs that were alike, that had some synergies together, but they're distinctive curriculums, and the licensing and credentialing that students achieve when they get out of them are distinctive. You know, they can diverge as they go through the thing, so we've tried to locate, like, we tried to locate them together. I don't know if I can find it on this one. Programming and web design is right next to design and visual. So this was used by the architects to create appropriate adjacencies so that we could take advantage of that and probably have some cost savings there too. We have a number
The
of...
cluster map you got going there.
Yeah. Don't look at it too much, you're gonna have to.
But yeah, so I mean, it's sort of going along the line of his line of questioning, you know, like I said, these technologies are blending and blending.
You know, the word I would use is efficiency. You know, we're going to be able to capture efficiencies in a new building that we cannot imagine capturing in the building we have. For instance, just in terms of the size of it, it's going to be much smaller, cheaper to maintain, cheaper to heat. And when you look at the efficiencies of some of these adjacencies, like I look at culinary arts and hospitality, a lot of our staff are dually certified. So I might not need 2 separate teachers to teach hospitality and culinary. Those are efficiencies that we're looking forward to gain. As we transition to that smaller school and programs drop off, there are going to be some natural efficiencies based upon, you know, the credentialing of our staff and how they work together in this new academy model.
Well, you're already in the process of combining plumbing and HVAC, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I saved up all my questions, so this next one's unrelated. I assume you're on some type of energy aggregation model?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we purchase.
Do you know how much you get for your spending per kilowatt hour? What your aggregation is?
I don't remember that. I can get back to you on that, right?
Okay, yeah,
I
thank
don't
you.
remember that off the top of my head.
I think we're due to reduce some of that as well.
I think we have
Oh, we
another-
had a roll.
Yeah, we've already rolled it.
Are there any other towns that are interested in joining?
I've been courting 1 or 2. And you know, Valentine's Day is coming, might do something special. Watertown, one of the towns that really should join is Watertown. They're not associated with any vocational school. They have no Chapter 74 programs of their own. I think once there's a change in some of the leadership there, we might have some openness there, and that's what you're going to happen soon. Wellesley, although we don't get many students from them, they're not associated with any school. I have had some conversations with Newton again, even though they have that great big school. They only have 6 Chapter 74 approved programs. And we've had some interesting discussions with Cambridge.
Kind of going off of that, I mean, these towns that you're looking at, I assume you're looking at the percentage, these are wealthy towns, Newton, Wellesley.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking to a gentleman earlier who lives in Sherburne, and, you know, those surrounding towns, the bulk of students go to private schools.
Yes.
So, I mean, you're opening yourself up to towns that, you know, maybe you're looking at the percentage that go to private schools and the trends like that.
We have done some studies around that, but let me just say, Watertown We currently have 75 students from ours.
Oh, okay. Well,
So they are, if, with the second.
well, they're not necessarily in the same boat as Wellesley and Newton.
Right. No, we have, what was the second point you asked? Oh, studies.
private school.
The last 2 years, we surveyed parents who had their child accepted into Minuteman but did not attend. Over 2 years we did that. I think it was the fall of 11, the fall of 12 and 13. We had about a 25% return rate on, and we had 10 variables that we had identified. And the number one variable was we chose another school. And when we asked them, what other school did you choose? 2/3 of them chose a private school. The second biggest reason was my child didn't want to go leave their friends, you know.
But I figured that'd be number one.
Yeah, so did I, but
My child didn't want to spend an hour and a half on a bus.
it's not an hour.
Bus comes at 6:05.
Okay, well, oh, go ahead. Then
Okay.
Ed. Ed?
Yeah, the distinction between the new school with demolition and without demolition, what is it that you do with the building if you're not demolishing it?
Great, that assumes we can do something with it. So if we can repurpose the building somehow, there has been various private and public interest in the building, should it become available. One of the things I'd like to see is that the building raised and it be turned into more recreational and athletic fields. And we have two people, actually, two private parties that want to contribute to and help raise funds to put an aquatic center there, an natatorium. Because in the new building, we lose our pool. And there's some very strong interest in helping us with that. And I've talked to folks in Lexington about it, and Lincoln as well. And they're very interested in adding more recreational space for Lexington.
You have a ballpark figure for demolition?
I think it was 8 million,
The difference between the two costs.
basically, and assuming there'd be some, hazardous waste remediation.
I was just gonna say, a 1972 building that hasn't had much done to it, it's gonna be a brownfield site.
Right. Yes, Jennifer.
Have you done numbers to what the assessment would be for the new building for the towns, the different towns based on the new agreement?
Yes.
Okay?
We have done the numbers, we haven't rolled them out yet. We're just testing the assumptions, but we expect to have.
We give you a ballpark. When we looked at all 16, for the model there with demo, the $86 million model, the range, now this was the impact on the median household tax bill in each community. So, half the houses are more expensive, half are less, not the average. And the annual impact ranged between $13 and I think the highest was $59.
Okay, so you're not looking at a $200 tax increase.
Nobody, I think.
Boston Market or Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Well, I know.
You're gonna get a Mercedes for them.
When Concord Carlisle built their high school, the average tax rate in Carlisle went up $700.
Nothing.
You're gonna, so I'm looking at something that's comparable, actually significantly $50,000 more, although it is over a significantly larger
Yeah,
district.
it's the last time we did this 4 or 5 years ago, the impact was higher, and I'm not really sure why, but I think we were using the 120 million, not the 70 million.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. So the top of the biggest impact that I recall seeing on the charts was about $58, $59.
Now, the rumors are 6 communities would be interested in pulling out under the new agreement, is that roughly what
I
you?
don't see that at all. I see maybe 2 or 3.
Okay, all right.
And those 2 or 3 want space in the building, so they'll be contributing to the.
Under the regional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, we really appreciate the time and your interest being here. If you have any other communities in your individual towns that we can go out and talk, I want to go out and talk more about the building and get some feedback on which of the models. I mean, if you look at it from a dollar basis and all that, it seems pretty pretty reasonable that we would go with something like this, but I don't know, I don't want to assume that. I want to get people talking about it.
One more question, sorry. You were mentioning that you can raise the base that you get from MSBA.
Mhm.
Are those things that would likely increase the cost? Because I know sometimes.
No, they would decrease the cost.
No, I mean, increase the estimated total cost, because I know sometimes
Oh.
green initiatives are more expensive.
I think what you're asking me is, when I mentioned eligible and ineligible costs,
Right.
sometimes that's a slippery wicket there because you think they're eligible, but they're declared ineligible, and so that would raise the cost up. But again, this is assuming the 40% with no additional points.
Right.
So I don't want to say it's a worst-case scenario, but it's very conservative.
And they definitely don't help with any kind of athletic fields or.
You can use up to 8% of your total award for site work.
Okay.
And that includes, so we're looking at 6.4 million to do site work. That would be a challenge on our site to get, you know, up to code and current athletic fields. for that amount.
But they won't reimburse for modular classrooms, and they won't reimburse for demolition, and they won't reimburse for swimming.
Or a field house.
Or field house.
So the new,
Oops, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
Is
but-
the new school would be on the existing fields? Is that?
Well, if you can see this in the darkness over here, this is, right where these these fields are now is where our current building is. And so right around here is the Lexington-Lincoln town line. So if this were to happen, the entire new building would be in the town of Lexington.
Lincoln.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lincoln. I only have 16.
Which is where the fields are now?
The football field is right about here, yeah.
Okay. Is there a plan for those kids during the construction years to use fields somewhere else? Is that, because you're not going to take a building down and start a new building?
Boy, I can't wait
at
to
the same
figure that
time.
out, but we will.
Okay. You know, Lexington's not all that far away.
Well, we've had problems with our fields in the past. For instance, this baseball field, which one year we couldn't have any games, so we scheduled all our games away, which is, you know,
Oh, okay.
from the competition point of view. But practice and stuff, I don't know yet. Yes.
Well, I mean, I guess so then some of your unknowns are still zoning issues, planning board pushback.
Well, we've had
Cons.
5 or 6 meetings in Lincoln, 3 or 4 meetings in Lexington, and then I brought Lexington and Lincoln together for one meeting to talk about, you know, the challenges of being in 2 different towns. And we've been to the conservation board in Lincoln, the planning board, the selectmen. I think there's another board, a land use board there. So, and we've met with the neighbors, the abutters, I think at least twice, because they were very concerned when they heard about this. So we've done a lot of work in laying the groundwork, so everyone knows we're doing something. We've also met with the national park, because that's right here. In this buffer zone right here, we don't own this land. This is Route 2A. This is owned by the national park. We don't have any road frontage on this whole 68 acres except for this little mill street here. So we're, you know, people think, well, you could sell that property and get $200 million. Well, we can't, because this is an easement going under the power lines from Eversource, it's called now. So we don't own that land either. We're completely landlocked, except for this little rural road, and the Lincoln residents who live down here don't want any additional traffic there. We're gonna honor that as best we can. And we've had to do some additional testing for wetlands and stuff that we got approval and worked with Lincoln and Lexington on this side. So we understood where the peat was and where the rock ledge was. Yes, David?
Ted raised the point that if you don't demolish the building, there might be some ongoing expenses just to keep you can't
Oh, yeah,
totally
yeah.
not heat it and so forth. So I wonder if that isn't an argument for rather than being hopeful about some development that may or may not happen, to just tear the thing down and be done with it. And
Yeah,
you can sell the land, right? The land is just not saleable.
You could keep the old building, let it keep breaking, and have the students fix it.
That's the project.
Good thought, but we're not doing that.
No. Right.
The beauticians probably wouldn't make much of a contribution.
Well, great, so like I was saying, if you want me to come to any of your towns individually and meet with, I really would like to talk with more school committee people too, as the opportunity comes up, because educators have different questions. And I'd like to be answering some of those as well. So thank you for having us, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
So that was functionally our only agenda point, but I would like to, if there's any other comments, questions, any new business from folks that have attended? Is there any thought about when to have the next Tri-Town meeting?
Just point of information, I'm Don Hawks from Stowe, Board of Selectmen. We're having a town meeting 2 weeks from this past Monday night. 3 articles, and one of them is the major one that is the elephant in our room that's been kicking around for 2 or 3 years. We're proposing to repurpose the former Pompaciticus School into a combination. It sounds like a weird one, but I think it'll work. Fire station, council on aging, food pantry, recreation office, functional meeting room, and we're gonna have 10,000 square feet left over in the corner of the building for future use. It's nearly an acre of building. Comes with a price tag of $9.9 million, some of which has already been set aside or prepaid for design funds. So we're at the article for town meeting is $9.2 million. 200 of that is going to come from free cash, and it's going to require a debt exclusion vote, and we're having that on a Saturday, which is the first time we've done that in some time.
You said 2.2 million is going to come from free cash?
No, 200,000.
Oh, 200,000, okay, wow, I totally
I
heard
wish
that
we could.
wrong.
I wish we
I know,
could.
I was like,
could do it.
whoa.
We're in fairly good shape with stored assets, but not that much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big news from the eastern edge of the district.
Okay. Harvard's looking for a new town hall. See, they need some space. Could have Harvard in Stowe.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
What about setting a date for next meeting?
Yes,
Before we do that?
we decided.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We decided.
What is it?
I'm sorry, March
March
11th,
11th
does
and
that
Bolton.
work?
March 11th in Bolton.
Wednesday?
It's a Wednesday, yeah, let's go back to Wednesdays if we can.
Thank you.
I won't be there.
It's a Wednesday.
Is that good?
Lorraine, when is the school committee meeting? 25th?
No, in March.
So it's 2 weeks from the 20, what's,
That would be the, so
Yeah,
we
would
would
be
need to
the
do,
11th.
we would need to do the 4th. So that we don't conflict with the school committee.
Lorraine, was I correct in hearing that you guys have to vote on the budget on the 11th?
no.
On the 11th of March?
Why did you say 11?
That's what I thought I heard last night,
Oh, I kept you on the 25th.
I did too.
of March.
Yeah,
No,
I
it's
did
February.
No,
Their
we
next
don't
meeting.
vote on it. I'm not ready to vote.
No, that's what, because we were gonna get more explanation.
On the 12th, but not vote on it.
But I hadn't heard that we had a vote, because I know that there's someone vote on March. I know, but we're going to accept.
Yeah, which is why I thought it was March 11th. We don't know.
Okay. Well, then
But your
we'll,
meeting is March 11th?
When are you meeting in March?
The 25th,
The 25th and the 11th, right?
okay.
Then we
It's every 2 weeks.
So we'll do the 4th.
We'll do the 4th.
So the next tri-town will be the 4th, then.
Roger that.
The previous Wednesday.
Okay. So no,
And you'll tell us where?
it's important. Yes, and it'll be, at the whole. Yeah, we'll get it. I'll be happy to.
That's right.
Very cool. Anything else for anyone?
Nope.
We are adjourned.